and welcome to GM Tips, the show where my friends and I share with you our thoughts and suggestions on how to game master your role-playing game. I'm your host, Satine Phoenix, co-creator of Maze Arcana and a dungeon master for D&D. Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, Vampire the Masquerade, 7th Sea, Castles and Crusades, Cthulhu, and all of the many, many other amazing tabletop games out there have helped many of us through so many things. Loneliness, boredom, writer's block. We try to escape our troubles with movies, books, and video games, and as fun as they are, for some of us, they don't fill that very specific need that tabletop role-playing games do. Communication. More than that, shared experience. Creating memories with other people. That is what I find is the most important part of playing tabletop games. Matthew Mercer! Hi!
I missed you.
Oh my God, thank you so much. This has been an amazing adventure.
Oh, I couldn't imagine anybody who could take the torch and elevate it so much more. It's been such an absolute pleasure to watch this, and oh man, it's been great.
Yeah, so let's see. You've been gone for almost a year on GM Tips. What have we learned outside of here gaming all the time?
Pertaining specifically to GM Tips,
Yeah.
definitely learned that there's only so much a single person has to offer.
Yeah.
Every GM's personal experiences are so vastly different and similar in a lot of ways, but they have their own flavor and their own stories and their own things to add to it. And part of the reason why I stepped away from it was I reached a point where I was like, I don't know what else I can impart.
Empty.
Yeah, that couldn't be elevated by a fresh look, and immediately you came to mind. And legitimately, it's been just this constant expansion of what this format could be. And you've brought in so many amazing people to expand upon that even. And so what I've learned is, one, there are so many amazing people out there for me to learn from, and I have been continuously through the series, and that's been an absolute joy. I've learned, I think one of my big things, pertaining back to an episode about GM mistakes in particular, you make a lot of them, and I think part of what's interesting about the recently emerging kind of live stream aspect of gaming is you get to put all of those flaws out on display, which can be a very scary thing. It can be a very, very scary thing in that format, but it's also hopefully showing people that it's okay to mess up as well. I make mistakes all the time.
You had to own it, though.
Exactly.
It's like, okay, the first 3 episodes I did for Maze Arcana were like terrible because I couldn't feel like everyone's sitting so far away. And I'm like, but where's your energy? And then I started flustering, and then they started cross-talking, and I'm like,
Yeah, but how do I regain control?
But now I don't care. Like, okay, I'm going to say a thing. And then next episode, that was wrong. Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
And it feels good to be that confident.
And I think confidence is the key, too, even if it's feigned confidence. If you're the GM, everyone is there largely at the behest of what you're providing and what you're trying to tell at the table. And you have to keep in mind the players are as invested in you as you're invested in them. And there's a bit of trust there that you have to kind of come to understand and hope for. And if you make a mistake, for the most part, the players won't notice.
Because they don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. And so you have to kind of continue with that confidence and push through to the next beat, the next narrative element. And even if you make a mistake, and even if in hindsight, which every GM does for the past the next 2 days after a game, you're like, oh man, what could I have changed? What could I have done differently? I do that all the time.
But that's a good game master.
This is true. I hope so.
Yeah. Well, because you can't, if you think that you're doing everything right, you're not going to grow and evolve. And that's kind of a life lesson.
Look at that.
I think.
Boom, not just GM tips, life tips.
This is Life Tips with Matt Mercer and Satine Phoenix.
Oh, that's all I had to add to life tips.
Yeah.
So that's about it.
Fake it.
Yeah.
Is that what's the point?
Kinda, yeah.
But with confidence.
Faking it with confidence. Bullshitting with confidence is the base tenet of GMing well, I think. And that goes for making mistakes. And learn them, acknowledge them, try and improve going forward, but don't let that drag you down. Don't let it make you feel bad that you're not doing as well, or make it feel like you're screwing up the game, because you're not. Because even if you throw the rules entirely out the window, as long as you and the players are having a good time at the end of the day and you're able to tell the story of the experiences you had, then that's a complete success.
Because unless you're going, they can't tell that you're having a problem.
And sometimes it might happen. Sometimes you'll start to have a freak out. I've had games where, like, say you lose control and you're like, I don't know what to do. It's okay to step away for a moment. It's okay to tell the players, all right, guys, let's take a quick bathroom break. take a walk outside, have some water, smoke your cigarette, whatever what you need to do to kind of relax and recenter yourself. Don't feel like you have to always be on in a moment where you're uncomfortable. You can step out of that space, regather yourself, and then return when you are.
That was David Nett's suggestion. He's like, just go to the bathroom. I'm like, now I have this vision of David Nett with all these books in the toilet.
Well, now I just know whenever I'm talking to David and he tells me he has to go to the bathroom, I've made him really uncomfortable.
He's like,
I'm going to be really, really self-conscious now whenever he tells me that. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah. Another thing that I wanted to revisit is listening, and that was something that almost every single game master said on the show was, you have to listen to your players. You have to hear them and not just tell the story and hope that they play along. You have to hear how they're reacting. On Critical Role, like, it's so intense because you have so many people, but what I love is that you guys are all engaged. The players are like listening to one another, they're listening to you, they're all waiting. I mean, sure, sometimes they get excited, but I think that just goes to show that you guys are friends and you actually care about each other.
That lends a lot to it, and most game groups will get there very quickly. That's kind of the magic of tabletop gaming is, no matter if any of you knew each other beforehand, the more you begin to build these stories together, even if you only know them by their character, you can't help but form these bonds of trust, and you get to know, honestly, more about each other than you might in any social setting. Like, in my opinion, in my experience, the people I game with, I feel I understand on a much deeper level than a lot of other people in my life.
Yeah.
And so, you build that trust, and when you do, you begin to become not just engaged in the story, but in each other, and you're excited to see what the person to your left's going to do. You're excited to see what they're going to add to the story. And as a GM, honestly, that's the real joy of the game, is watching the players take what you've gifted them and have them run with it. If you're just steamrolling through the story, you're robbing yourself of really the magic spark of tabletop gaming. So yeah, listening is so important. It's a game of tennis. You throw something to them, they throw it back. You throw something to them, they throw it to each other, they throw it back. And as long as you're open to that and you're paying attention, you'll be constantly caught off guard by what they throw back at you, but you'll be amazed to see what your expectations of your story were versus what the players end up creating. It's going to end up being something so much more magical and memorable. Whether that means success or failure, both can be equally memorable. But yeah, it's let your players surprise you and trust in them. And if ever you feel that trust is faltering, discuss it.
Yeah.
Don't ever harbor resentment or worry without being open and communicating that, because that'll begin to sour a game table really fast.
Yeah, and it hurts friendships. Like, it's just, in life, you should communicate. So communication's a really big one. Listening, communication. Let's move on to story.
Okay.
So Amy Vorpal and I had this super awesome episode where we just like dig into like the hero's journey and like structure. But a lot of what I do is I kind of like build the front end of it and then kind of kick it at the players. I'm like, okay, now where are you gonna go?
Right.
And I think it's really important to tell the people watching that, like, yes, build your story, build your world, but let the players play inside of it.
Yeah.
And let them choose versus railroading. Yeah. How do you feel about that?
I feel, for some people, railroading is a comfortable space. I don't want to tell people not to do that, as long as that's the kind of game you want to run. Especially for new players, sometimes you need to a little bit. When they're not comfortable in the setting, or they're not comfortable being so open in a role-playing environment where they'll be able to seize and drive the story, sometimes you have to nudge them along. So don't be afraid. Don't feel like you always have to sandbox it, especially with new players. You get confidence when you have an idea of where the story's going. So build enough to the point where you have an idea of where you want it to go. If you leave it too open, you might find yourself grasping at straws to figure out where to go next when the players throw you a curveball. You want some sort of light at the end of the tunnel that you can begin to guide them to, or at least make the choices, or take the choices they made and see how you can weave them towards that destination. But like you said, if you spend too much time outlining exactly where you want them to go, when they do deviate, it's going to throw you off. You're going to be in a space of discomfort and worry. All of a sudden, I didn't plan for that. I spent so much time knowing so well what I thought was going to happen that now that I'm left in this void of possibility, I lock up. Yeah,
so I like to say know your world. Because if you know the world, if your story's going in this direction, they go in that direction, you just have this thing over here redirect them or add to the story or whatever.
Yeah.
So...
And the occasional time that they even weave so far that they're not going towards that light, if you've put enough thought loosely into the spaces around it and a few ideas in that, you can follow that thread and see where it takes you. And I've had campaigns completely derail for a while for that, but you end up having a great time. And once again, it comes with experience at the table to be comfortable to really run in those weird, unexpected directions. But some real magic comes out of those experiences too.
I love gaming.
Me too.
Oh man, we're so lucky. We kind of touched on it earlier. How do you specifically learn how to be a better game master?
Playing, both as a game master and as a player. Both experiences are so different. If you have one and not the other, you're missing out on the opportunity to learn the perspective of the other side. If you're a player and you've never GM'd, I highly recommend GMing a game. Even if it's just a one-shot, even if it's just a short story for your friends. The experience of creating the story and running it helps you understand, one, a much stronger appreciation for what GMs do, and kind of the gift that they're giving to you and your players, but also it allows you to understand the process of how a player can really push and control a narrative.
Yeah.
As a GM, if you've never played, you have a hard time understanding the mindset of how a player tries to accept and consume the story bits that you're throwing at them, and then that space of trying to figure out what choices they have to make to bring it to what they think is the inevitable conclusion. So always try to experience a little bit of the other side of that gaming experience. And also playing with other GMs.
Oh yeah.
Like if you've only played games just you and your friends, that's fine. But if you have the opportunity to go to your local game store, to play online on Roll20 or other online formats through Skype, having other GMs GM for you, you will learn so much from your different experiences, your different styles. There'll be things they'll do, you'll be like, I would have done that differently. And there'll be things they'll do, you'll be like, I would never have thought of that.
Yeah.
That's incredible. You might be like, that's an incredibly tactical battle. I'm nowhere near as, that's my thing. Like I struggle and work really hard to try and be very tactically minded when it's me against, 7 players.
Yeah.
But I falter in that too. So I learn a lot from watching and playing with other people and seeing the incredible detailed battlefields and scenarios they put up there. And you get to watch how they create character personalities, how they can improvise off of player choices in ways that you never expected, so you learn from each other. And I think the GM community has been doing that for years once the internet began to build forum boards for conversation and exchanging of ideas, and that's just even more of a flourishing space nowadays. So honestly, go out there and try and play with other GMs as a player, GM for other GMs, and see how they, from their perspective, can find new and unique ways to mess up your
they
detailed.
will try every time.
Of course, it's kind of a fun GM thing when you have another GM friend of yours running a game for you to be like, okay, now I get to do to you what my players always do to me.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, learning from each other, exchanging ideas, asking for suggestions. We're in this age of interconnectivity. There's no reason not to use that to help each other better our way to play and run our game.
Yeah, I just feel so lucky. All the pre-interview conversations I had with all the game masters on the show, it's just like, there's one thing about playing and then watching, kind of absorbing, but sitting down and having full-on game master conversations. That's been the coolest thing ever, because we only can record 15 minutes here, but I'm talking to them for like an hour and a half. I'm like, this is so cool.
Well, here's the thing too, is like, we have this now, we didn't have this growing up. When most of us started gaming back in the day, we were creating and learning in a void. You had like the opening passages of the Dungeon Master's Guide, and that was it. You didn't know if you were playing right or wrong. You didn't know if you were ruining the game. You didn't know if you were doing a job. You didn't know.
Care because you were just having fun.
Exactly. It was just that experience. Now that the community has been able to come together like this, you have this breadth of information and knowledge and experiences. So use it. Please use it. We couldn't use it.
So we are going to move on to some questions from the Twitters.
Okay. Ooh.
Okay. Dun, dun, dun. Let's see. Oh,
Magical.
hello.
Pad of digital text.
Technology. Question number 1.
Yes.
Oh, I don't know who wrote this. Is how do I manage atmospheric sounds and music without slowing the momentum of the game? Sirenscape.
Sirenscape's a really, really awesome tool. It's been really helpful for anyone who doesn't have the time to put together their own playlists or sound effect lists. Is a huge boon. On top of that, it can be hard to remind yourself when to make those changes atmospherically in the game. So whenever I prepare my game prep notes and my sheets, I will put at the top of a scene opening, I will put at the top of a climactic moment or a transition to battle, heavy bolded asterisks and notes, playlist this name.
Nice.
You know, or sound effect, this sound
Hell's
effect.
Rebel.
Yeah, and what that does is as I'm going through my notes and seeing the progression of the campaign based on what the players are doing, that will be a reminder for me in the moment to, change the music. That way I'm not having to concentrate on when to do it or be worried when I should be altering things, and I can focus on the story and discussing and, you know, describing scenes while I move over and adjust it over.
Yeah.
You know, it might slow the game a little bit at times, especially if you're getting used to the, you know, the changing of sound effects and music. But it elevates the atmosphere for your players so much, and it's such a
really
simple
does.
thing to add to it.
Yeah, for Sirenscape on my show, I have a list of my favorite ones. And this is something I learned over the season. I was like, oh God, I can't be DJing and telling stories at the same time. So I have a list written out. And I know that if they're in the jungle, this is what it is. If it's daytime, this is what it is. So I can just like pre-program it all. So I just like, button.
Yep.
Story button. Jungle button.
Yep.
Cave button.
And if you can do Sirenscape, just making playlists on a digital device, just divide it by moods or themes that are, like you said, very basic, and one push is what you want. You want as little active action to have to, you know, apply to your device. So, you know, if you want, like I have my divisions of moods, like creepy, big creepy, small battle, big battle.
All different shades of creepy and battle.
Well, you tend to use those a lot in games, I find in my experience. But yeah, so using those devices and simplifying the music input is a good way to doing it. And if you have the ability, Sirenscape makes it a lot easier.
Vampire Matt asks, you end a game with a high-tension, suspenseful cliffhanger. How do you recapture that feeling at the start of the next session?
Oh, interesting. First and foremost, when you finish, and I recommend this to any game session, when you finish the game, when you wrap up and the players are putting their dice away, take notes of what just happened. Because it might be weeks and weeks before you play again, and you want to remember as much detail of that final beat as you can. So write down what happened, write down those climactic beats that you want to open on next time, and then when the players return, take a moment to set the stage. Take a moment to, you know, really recapture and narrate exactly what you left on. I mean, especially if you've going through weeks at a time without playing, the players need a refresher anyway. But you want to be able to give yourself as much capability to rebuild that atmosphere. So as opposed to going, okay, last we left off, you were about to fight the fire giant who had you at the edge of the cliff. What do? You can do that. Or you can say, you know, last we left off, as the crawling flames in the distance of the fire flame began to flicker and brighten the outskirts of your vision. You see as the fume-like thick black clouds fire up with ash and brimstone in the background as the shadowed figure of the fire giant Shar Khan drags his blade across the rock, the arcing of it down, slamming with sparks into the stone before you. Glancing over your shoulder, you look back as the warm wind hits the back of your neck. You look down to see the 1,000-foot drop into the large lava falls, an open sea of fire. What do?
That.
So there you go.
That's how you do it.
Yeah, so take those notes, build that intro in the time you have to prepare for the next game, and that will immediately thrust your players right into that moment that you left off last time.
I'm going to do that for my next season. Yeah, thank you. Paul Sand says, how did you get to be so damn good looking?
That's to you, right?
I'm going to say it's to both of us.
Thanks.
Hair product. Matt Mercer hair product.
Growing up with a mullet for most of your young adult life, I think teaches you to try and not do that again.
Mine's eating the young.
Eating the young?
Yeah, it's really good for your complexion.
We'll have to talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've tried a few different regimens, didn't work out. That might be something for me.
Yeah, we'll talk after. Josh Luskak says, what do you do when the players aren't happy with the GM playstyle? How do you approach that conversation?
Oh.
Because that's intense. People ask that a lot.
That's an important discussion.
And I'm non-confrontational, so...
Yeah. Well, it shouldn't be confrontational. I say conversation a lot because it should be a conversation. You have to approach it like a conversation. You have to make sure it happens. So if you feel that your campaign is getting to that point, or the players themselves are beginning to voice concerns, or you know, the fun that you're hoping to achieve isn't seemingly come across, then either after the campaign session's done, talk with your players then, or schedule a lunch where you all get together in a casual space where you don't feel like it's a breakup conversation or anything. Yeah, you don't want to interrogate anybody. You want to be like, all right, guys, have some drinks, some nice music on, catch up on your week a bit, and be like, all right, cool. So I want to talk about the campaign. What do you guys like about it? What do you not like? What are your frustrations? What are your concerns?
That way you're not singling one person out.
Correct. Cool. And then to say conversation because it's both sides. Because players might also be contributing to this thing without realizing it. Sometimes there's behaviors or things that players can do that they don't realize are sabotaging their own enjoyment.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean necessarily that all the opinions are right, but it's good to get these out in the open in a space where it's comfortable. And you want to make sure that everyone's comfortable to discuss this too. You don't want to be like, all right, guys, so here's why you're ruining my game. You want to be like, guys, I want to talk about this. I want to make this better. And in doing so, I want us all to be open about the things that we're worried about or not really enjoying about this game. And so you say them in a respectful manner. Everyone kind of voices their opinion, and then you all together decide how to improve that going forward. If they feel there aren't enough role-playing experiences, or they find that the story isn't allowing for enough heroic moments for them to feel like it's worth their time, then take that to heart and be like, okay, cool. So going forward, when I build my narrative, I'll consider more opportunities for you each to shine as the heroes of the story I'm trying to build for you. If they feel like there's no stakes or any consequences, you can begin to go like, okay, good to know. I'll listen more for the choices you make and consider ways that down the road that can impact the story in a way where you feel like, oh no, there are real issues with the bad choices I make.
Yeah.
And with players, if the GM's like, I feel like you aren't engaging or taking the ball that I'm throwing to you as much, how can we work on this? Explain to the player the kind of gives that you give them. Like, all right, so when I look to you and ask you, what do you want to do? Perhaps try responding in character to the NPC. It doesn't mean you have to have a silly voice or anything, but consider not describing it as
demeanor.
My character says this. Change your posture. And I talked about this a little bit about in some of the role-playing videos early on. Your posture and finding the posture of your character is enough of a physicality change that you'll already be in a different mindset beyond just sedentary in your seat waiting to roll some dice.
Yeah.
And when you're in that place and you try and respond as your character, as uncomfortable as it may be at the beginning, you'll find yourself. You'll find it easier and easier for you to step into that space. But yeah, have this conversation on how all of you can collaboratively make this a better experience. And it's not always going to work out either. Sometimes at the end of it, you might all say, we're all shooting for different types of games here.
And that's okay.
Yeah, maybe we'll all just step away and try and find other games, or you three, we can all go off and maybe start our own separate things.
I think that's the hardest part of the conversation is admitting that there are different games and not everybody's going to play the same game.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a breakup because you might love the person, but you really don't want to leave. You want them to play, you almost want them to play your game, but that's not how life is.
They're wonderful people, good friends that I love and have gamed with many times who I would not game with them again.
Yeah.
But we're still good friends.
Yeah.
The way they run their game, I respect it. I don't agree with some of the themes or the way that they play it. It's either something about it doesn't feed what I get out of games, but we both thoroughly enjoy, and our players thoroughly enjoy the games that we play separately. So that's okay. You just have to acknowledge that not every style is going to fit every player, and you need to just separate and find something that works for you both individually.
And I'm really glad that this person asked the question because I don't think that people know that it's okay to say that. Mm-hmm. I think they want to fit in so bad. Not want to fit in, but they want to be okay with everything.
Yeah.
And you can't be okay with everything.
You can't. There's only so much compromise you can give before it itself undermines the fun you could be having.
Yeah.
And I will say a lot of that too is a behavior stemmed from the older days of tabletop gaming where there was a much larger void of it, where there wasn't this plethora of choices. And people still have a hard time, and I see it often on comments online, people are like, I can't find a game group, but because we have communities online and we have programs that allow us to play digitally across the world with almost no lag time, you have a lot more opportunities now, and that behavior can be eventually kind of shrugged off and believe that with enough patience, you'll be able to find a game group that fits your style.
Yeah. Tom Doncom says, do you have any tips or tricks for DMing games with lots of players or fights with lots of NPCs?
Okay, yes. For me personally, the golden number of players is about 3 to 5 for me, because you get to really focus there. Critical Role, this has been a larger group than I'm used to, but it's been a welcome challenge as well. Certain rule systems, and 5th edition in comparison to older editions is much less crunchy and allows a lot more of a fluid gameplay, but it still begins to break down at the higher player counts. Yeah. So for groups of numerous players, I recommend trying to find ways that you can truncate the combat. That involves sometimes removing die rolls for some elements of it.
Yeah.
Like as opposed to having a longsword that does 1d8 damage, like they do in the monster manual for a lot of monsters as well, you just take the average die roll and then add the modifier. Be like, your longsword now does 8 damage every time you
Yeah,
attack. So all you're
very
rolling
simple.
is a d20.
Yeah.
And so the dice rolls then become less of a time sink. It's not much, but it does add up over time. Also make sure that all the players are aware who's on deck when it's somebody else's turn.
Yeah, Rudy's really good. He's like, because you can see us all freaking out, and he's like, done, Satine's on deck. Oh, okay, boom, now I'm ready.
Yep, nothing slows the game more than, okay, it's your turn. Let's, hold on. What's...
Next.
Yeah.
I actually go, one of my players, I'm like, 1, 2... And so now, when she's at the grocery store and she can't make decisions, there's a little Satine on her shoulder that's like 3, 2, 1, and then she makes her decision.
That's beautiful.
I also have people roll their damage and their d20 at the same time.
That helps tremendously.
Like, just do it, and whether you hit or not, at least you have that number there.
Mm-hmm. And as far as like large monster groups as well, you can roll initiative individually, or if you want to, you can just have a monster turn in which they all go at once, or you can break them up by groups. If you have different types of enemies, you could have, which is what I usually do.
Yeah,
I usually have like a skeleton, don't roll individually for all the skeletons, but like have like, a skeleton initiative, have a wyvern initiative. And when the monsters go, same thing. You use the set numbers in the monster manual. That way you're just rolling for the attack rolls.
Yeah.
And if you have a mass scale combat, if you have 20 skeletons, you can just roll 5 or 10 d20s and then average out the damage against much of them. You're rolling basically for 2 to 3 skeletons per roll.
Yeah, that's cool.
So you can find ways to make it move a little quicker that way.
Voltroning! So basically, I have like 2 or 3 people, or maybe 4, because like, okay, say you have a combat, you have one guy, one big bad guy, and everyone jumps him at the same time. So by Voltroning, I have everybody kind of essentially doing, like, ganging up on him. So because a lot of times adventurers play together for many years, they know how each other fight. So if they work together and have this stuff prepared ahead of time, I'll give them advantage. If there's more than one, they get triple advantage. Or more than 2 people, triple advantage, which is crazy, but whatever.
Why not?
It lets them move fast, and they get really excited because then they'll get up and they'll start like, okay, now you go down here and you're doing this, and I'm up here doing this, or you've got like the wizard and the ranger doing stuff together. It's really fun to watch them because they're
That's
like,
fun.
we did a thing, and that's gonna be our move.
I like that.
Yeah, it's really cute. I'm proud of them. Last question. Farley asks, is there ever a time that a campaign can or should start over? Is it possible to make a campaign unplayable, or can it be fixed?
Oh, okay, wow. Most campaigns can be fixed with similar things like the aforementioned conversation of you and the players getting together and discussing why you all think it might not be working and taking suggestions on how to improve it. There might even be a point, like we said, where it can't be fixed. That doesn't necessarily mean the game group has to separate, but perhaps the story has gotten so unwieldy that you as the GM don't feel comfortable exploring where it can go. It's so broken to where the work to try, and this does happen, especially for newer players, where you don't quite understand how to rein in some of the choices. This happened when I was younger and first started playing, where just so many ridiculous choices were made that you ran with that all of a sudden everything's on fire. Which, if you're comfortable, you can still roll with that. But if you get to a point as a GM, you're like, I don't know what to do with this, guys. I wouldn't say drop it, because then it feels anticlimactic, but you can say, all right, guys, is it cool if we try and wrap up the story this next session? We'll do one final session, let the chaos really burn, see how crazy it can go, and then we'll end the story there, take a break, and come back. And this time, let's maybe try not to run it quite into the ground like we did this time. Once again, communication is key on this. It is possible it can become unplayable. And don't hate a GM if they ever get to that point too, because once again, they're under a lot of pressure and they're having to work with your crazy shit. And if it's too much for them, then that's totally fine. It's a limit, whether it be a limitation because of their experience or their comfort level, or may just have stuff going on in their life right now that's making it hard to do that. That's the thing. A GM is running your game, but they're also a human being with their own, successes and failures in life. And that'll affect
and story building.
Yeah.
Nobody understands how much energy game masters put into it.
Which is why you should be a GM.
You have
understand.
to. You should.
Try it out.
Yeah, I have, I don't know what the acronym is for this, fear of long-term campaigns. And I have fear of losing the story. So I really enjoy this 12-session season type thing. It's like, okay, I can do this story arc, but then I can stop and be like, okay, do I want to go on? Who's coming with me when I go on? we can revisit, okay, how did you like the story? How do we play together? And then kind of restructure it. And that's just straight fear. And but I feel like I'm very comfortable with that length of time. Yeah. And everyone gets a good story. They get a good wrap up, which I think is something, like I did a 3-year campaign, or I played in it, and it just got all over the place. But if looking back at it, there were definite moments that were sections that we could have actually stopped. So that's my tip.
Yeah, no, same thing with Critical Role and other campaigns as well. I think planning for a short term is a great idea because it gives you the comfort of knowing that you only have to plan for this period of time. And then when you get there and you finish that arc, then it's your and the player's decision to go, hey guys, do you want to make new characters? Or do you love this enough and see enough interest to keep going?
Yeah.
And if that's true, then you keep going. And even though you may be like, I didn't weave enough, Moffat-like threads to be a long-term, arc, that's fine, because I guarantee you there'll be unexpected things that the players or you drop that you can continue to pull into a long-term campaign. But yeah, like it's one of those things where you don't usually plan for that long of a campaign. If it happens, it's great. If not, you don't have to. Critical Role could have ended 3 different times. Our campaign, we had 3 major breaks and end arcs where we could have stopped and went to new characters. But everyone said, I want to keep going. And I went, you know what, me too. Let's keep going.
Nice.
Even looking back on the Conclave arc for our game, from a narrative standpoint, most of the characters' hero journey had come to a close with that arc. If this were a book, if this were a film, that would have been the perfect time to end, and it would have been a beautiful bow. But when we all talked about it, everyone went, well, I want to see what's next. I want to get to the high levels. I want to see, there's still threads I want to explore this. And so, yeah, let's do it. And so we did, and it's been a blast.
I loved the finale. That was really great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a lot of stress. a lot of pressure. Only one of the most well-known D&D and villain archetypes out there.
You rocked it.
Hope so.
And that is our show for today. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Oh, man. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you on the internet?
Okay. You can find me on Twitter at Matthew Mercer, Instagram at Matthew Mercer VO. And you can find me here on Geek and Sundry's Twitch stream mostly every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific to see our show Critical Role. You can also find me on Project Alpha, Dread with this lady here. And I think that's it.
Yeah. He's got a lot of stuff. I just really want to share with them the book and the tarot cards, because, oh my goodness. Just those things. Where can they get them?
The Tal'Dorei Campaign Guide you can find most local game stores or online. Still crazy that exists. I know. And tarot cards, and you can find other Critical Role merch on the shop at geekandsundry.com.
Cool. As always, I'm Satine Phoenix at Satine Phoenix. You can pick up and play one of my Guild Add-Up supplements for the Tomb of Annihilation at dmsguild.com. Watch us on Sagas of Sundry Dread on projectalpha.com. Catch me live every Sunday at noon on Maze Arcana's Orphan Echo on twitch.tv/Maze Arcana. And every Tuesday night, Dungeon Mastering Sirens of the Realms on twitch.tv/DND. Thank you so much for watching us here on Geek and Sundry. And see you next time.
Mm-hmm.
Matt.
Yeah?
Would you like to join me in DMing him out of here?
I'd be happy to.
Switch!
Oh, yeah! Comfy chair. Oh, knock everything over.
It's so warm and comfy, isn't it?
Look at you keeping it all perfect. All right, sorry.
Okay.
As the evening draws to a close, a fine book clasped in your hand, you lay back in your chair and your lids loll heavy as darkness takes your consciousness. Weightless and nothing, you feel the wind rush past you. Your ears grow cold and your physicality fades. You open your eyes and there's nothing before you but a swirling starscape, purples and blues, clouds of gases and distant cosmos, slowly shifting and swirling around you. A sun burns not far, closer than past, impossible speeds. Unknowing where or who you are, you see a singular pair of sparkling cosmic eyes, impossibly large, open before you. as a resonant voice speaks, omniscient and ever-present. Who are you?
Satine.
You glance down at your hands as you say your name, and you see your fingers are made of the same star stuff as the universe around you. You look down and your form merges and continues with the rest of the universe around you. You look up once more at the eyes, the tension relieved. They're almost welcoming. And you, Satine, are the storyteller. This is yours to create.